Our first guest this afternoon is Jimmy Doherty. Jimmy's Farm. It's not far from us, just south of the border in Suffolk. Since Jimmy's Farm, you'll know that Jimmy Doherty has been a regular on our TV screens. More recently, Jamie and Jimmy's Friday Night Feast with Jamie Oliver and, of course, Food Unwrapped on Channel 4. But Jimmy's with us today to talk about winter comfort food, and particularly because, Jimmy, I'll let you tell us about this, but you've got your own range of soups now, haven't you?
Well, not my own range. I'm working with Crosse and Blackwell because they have done some really interesting research, and they've asked up and down the country what we think of British food and do we think it's important. And they asked, if you're given a choice, would you prefer to buy British food? And in fact, people in the Norfolk area, 72% said yes. The national average was 65%. And when asked, is it important for UK companies to support British suppliers, the national average was 77%. Norfolk come in at 84% saying, yes, we should. And it really shows great support for British producers. And one thing that Crosse and Blackwell are doing with these soups is they are using British produce in the soup and really sort of pushing home the importance of doing that. And hopefully other companies will follow suit.
And it's something you've talked about for a lot of years now with your own farm, isn't it? That we should really fall in love again with what we can produce, which is world class.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important. I mean, Norfolk, an amazing agricultural county, and some of the best farmers in the world are here in Britain, and we should celebrate that. Everyone moans about the weather, it's raining and everything. Great conditions for growing what we do. And what's really important is that, we constantly push the boundaries. And I think that when you look at the new soups that Crosse and Blackwell are bringing out, one that really hits home for me is butternut squash, right? And straight away you think, oh, is that imported? No. There's farmers now in the UK, in Cambridgeshire, growing butternut squash. And that's really celebrating the innovation. And with all the political unrest at the moment and doing deals with different countries, all the rest of it, it's really important that we support our producers for our own domestic supply as well, because if we don't use it, if we don't celebrate it, we will lose those producers. So we've got to keep buying British wherever we can.
So butternut squash, we can grow it in this country. And when I was on holiday in the Isle of Wight a year or so ago, I was surprised to see, a huge industry growing garlic as well. So maybe we can grow more than people would think.
Well, I think we eat more garlic than the French do now as well. We can even grow quinoa in this country. So with our farmers, I always say if there was a farming Olympics, we'd be bringing home the gold every time, because it's not only the tradition, but it's the innovation as well. And that's what we got to keep pushing forward. How can we do things that are more sustainable? How can we do things that are better for the environment? And Britain's often leading that charge.
So soup, I think it's gone out of fashion in the last few years, but hopefully it's coming back. Do you have a favourite?
Well, I've got to ask you. This is a big question. Are you smooth or are you chunky?
Well, quite smooth.
I thought
really.
You'd say that. You sound so smooth, Matthew. You ooze the smoothness. But I think when it does get cold, I think, you can't beat a nice chunky soup. And actually, it's been shown that chunky soups keep you fuller for longer. So if you were on a diet, that's a great way of losing weight. But one of my favourites, I make a lot of soups. It's a great way of utilising, if you've got a Sunday roast left over, all that kind of stuff. But one they've got out at the moment at Crosse and Blackwell, it's cauliflower and Wensleydale, and that is just to die for.
Ooh.
Yes,
I like that.
There you are. Imagine
there's
yourself.
The classic, isn't there, with Stilton?
Broccoli
and
I do
Stilton.
that with any soup. I crumble Stilton into it with a nice bit of crusty bread. But imagine sitting by the fire, on your sheepskin with cauliflower and Wensleydale soup. I mean, that just wonderful.
So when does soup become stew? I'm going to sort of question you quite sternly about this whole issue of
You're cross-examining me on the stew side. Well, I think with stew, I always think of it'll be a little bit thinner. Often you'll have chunks of potato and meat in there, and often you'd have dumplings as well.
You would. Well,
Yeah.
I think you've passed the test there. I think that is very definitely a stew. But we're talking about soup today, and yeah, especially at this time of the year. But I feel that sometimes when you go in a restaurant, you don't often see soup on a menu now as a starter, whereas years ago you always did.
Yeah, ours, we always have soup of the day on there, so there's always a soup. And also, if I have people over, I always like to have a little soup as a starter. And one thing I do, I'll let you in on this, is that when I'm cooking, I've got friends over, and I'm doing I'll use a tin of soup and pretend I've done it, because actually you get well, Crosse Blackwell is pretty good at what they're doing. They've been doing it for 200 years, and the tin 100% recyclable, so that's all good. But I'll heat that up, I'll put that out, and they go, "Oh, this is amazing!" Oh yeah, only took me 5 minutes.
Oh dear! Well, now we know the tricks of the trade.
This is true. This is true.
But you see, you could have Jamie Oliver coming round for dinner. You can't fool him, surely.
Oh, I could fool him. Don't worry about that.
So tell me a little bit then more about how people can look at this research, because they've carried out some research at Crosse and Blackwell into people's eating habits at this time of the year.
Well, they have. I mean, asking people, is it important to buy British? And there's a bit of a divide, actually. It's the more urban areas of sort of 50-50. But soon as you get closer to the growing regions, when you get closer to the producers, people really understand the importance of buying British. And because we talk about being sustainable and preserving the environment. I mean, farmers are everything. They are everything from the food producers to the conservationists, and we need to keep this industry going. So, the idea of going to buy a tin of soup as cheap as £1, you're supporting British producers. We can all do our bit.
So what have you got growing at the moment down the road there at Jimmy's farm?
Oh, all sorts going on at the moment. So we produce a lot of turkeys. We've got the pigs, the cows, and the sheep and all the rest of it. But also we have now got a zoo license, because we have the farm park that's developed into a wildlife park. Because one of my major passions was conservation, and I did zoology, and I read on for a PhD in entomology. So I've always been ecologically minded, and as well as preserving our traditional livestock, I'm president of the Rare Breed Survival Trust. I'm also passionate about preserving our wild species as well. So we're doing quite a lot of work with lots of different species, including tapir and camels, and we've got a couple of crocodiles.
What?
Yeah,
crocodiles?
Make it snappy. Exactly.
What is a tapir?
A tapir. Tapir is the largest, one of the largest mammals in South America, because a lot of its habitat has been destroyed. The lowland tapir is under quite a lot of pressure, and we're now part of the international tapir breeding program, and hopefully this year we'll have our first baby tapir born.
Well, good luck with that. And I know you're only a short drive away from us in Norfolk, and we'll forgive you for having turkeys there, because we rather think that's our preserve.
You'll have to come and see us.
And how can... Well, look, yes. Well, that's an invitation. Yes, I'll bring my microphone along if you're not careful. Where do people go for more information about these new soups?
Right, if you want to... If you want to find out more about the soups, and if you want to find out more about the research, go to crosseandblackwell.co.uk.